Welcome back to another episode here of the Hart Hustle Podcast. Chris Powers, what's up, man? How are you doing
How
today?
you doing today? I'm doing great.
I'm doing good, my man. I'm doing good. I'm super excited for this conversation because I just want to start off with what your dad said to you and got you kind of in this higher ed space. And his son, you've got a brain, go use it.
Yes,
What did
sir.
that mean to you, man, to hear that from a man who never got the chance himself?
Right. I don't know. I'm very thankful for my father. He passed on in 1999 when I was 29 years old. And, at such a young age when he said that, I really didn't understand what he meant until he really broke it down for me. Because in his way, he was saying, son, I didn't have those opportunities. You've got these opportunities. You've got the brain. And my dad was a very intelligent man. Don't get me wrong. He was a gifted mechanic and a gifted carpenter. And he could build anything. I'm not kidding. Anything. And none of that has really been passed on to me genetically. So I can do a little, but not much. But hearing that from my father, it caused a stir within me,
Yeah.
and it was like, yeah, I am an okay student, and I can do this because I was the first one in my family to go to school, and so for my father with a seventh grade education to say that, I thought that was, very intelligent of him to have that ability to realize something in me that I didn't even know that I had, right? And,
Yeah.
and, and I think as parents, we identify that in our children and we try to bring that out. Maybe he thought, yeah, you're not going to be able to make it as a mechanic or a farmer, so you need to go to school. Maybe that was his way of saying that, but that's not the way I interpreted it. And even years later, when I brought that up to him, and he was like, yes, son. He goes, I always wanted you to go to college. I didn't want you to have to break your back or, break your hands to make a living. He goes, it's a hard life that way.
Okay. So your dad tells you that, and then you end up in higher ed. Is like,
Sure.
what's your role today? What's the school you represent, and how we get to this point?
Sure. I'm a vice president for enrollment. I have roughly 25 years experience in higher ed. I'm with Mount St. Joseph University. We are a Catholic liberal arts institution in Cincinnati, Ohio. And much of my path into higher education really starts at Berea College, where I did my undergrad in Kentucky. And, it put such an imprint on me to give back, right? To give back to the community, to have a social justice, focus in what you do. And so higher ed was a great path for me. Now I dabbled in the Air Force in restaurant work before I landed in higher ed, like a lot of young people do,
Yeah.
right? Until you figure it out. But that social justice compass was really, instilled in me at Berea College, and I'm very thankful for that experience. And what it's done for me, it's taken me on a road to servant leadership, right? And that's basically what I enjoy about my job is being a servant leader. Not only to my team but to the students, because
Yeah.
that's why we're here. At a university. For anyone who's at a university, whether you're a research university or small private, if you're not there for the students, you're there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And that was instilled in me very early on.
I love it, man. I mean, really kind of go back to what you mentioned about your dad. Your dad seeing in you probably more than you seen in yourself at the time.
Oh,
And
sure.
it's really you're really doing the same exact thing, right? So some of these students that come into a college
Oh, yeah.
that probably don't see themselves graduating, probably didn't see themselves ever going to school, but you guys are that light. I've heard something from Ethan that I can't forget out of the University of Hartford, and he says, we're fertilizing the future, right? And it's exactly what we're doing. Is really giving the future the ability to go out and realize what they're worth, what their value really is. And I love the university and college levels just because mistakes can happen, right? You go into a corporate world. You talked about the restaurant business,
Sure.
right? Oh my God. Listen, I never want to go back. I
Brutal.
don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah. I joke and tell my wife the only way I'm going back to the restaurant is if we're going to be homeless.
I'm
And I
telling
mean,
you.
because it's rough work, man. It really is.
Yeah, it is, man. So it's just cool, man. First, I want to say, actually, go back and say thank you for your service, right? Is because you
Sure.
did mention the Air Force.
Mhm.
What got you into the Air Force? Like, was that straight out of high school that you got there?
Oh, actually, I did in reverse. I went to Berea first
Oh,
and
wow.
graduated. And at that time, to be transparent, there was a downturn in the economy, right?
Hmm.
And so this was like in 1993, and I'm like, you know what? I want to serve my country. I want to, and I'm always has a long plan, right? You always have a long plan,
Yeah, yeah.
and I want to get money for graduate school. So that's what motivated me. My intentions were to go in enlisted for like a year or two and then become an officer. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to test drive the Air Force and see what it's all about. And like 2 years in, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do my four and I'm done. So those folks that serve for 25, 30, 35 years, kudos to them. I did my four and I was very proud to serve our country and serve in the Air Force. And I got money for grad school. So, my master's at U of L was paid for by my time in the Air Force.
Love that. So kind of go back to your dad and the words that he said, or you said, just seeing more in you than you see in yourself. I want to kind of go back to the story, man, because this nothing was handed to you, right? You grew
No,
up in
no.
a rural area, rode a bus, if I'm not mistaken, 3 hours a day to get to
Yeah.
school. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And because we kind of moved around with my dad's job. I was born in Cincinnati, and we lived in a rural part outside of Cincinnati. His job took us down to ATL, took us down
Mhm.
to Atlanta, which was a culture shock, and we can get into that in a few minutes.
Okay.
And then I had another culture shock because we went back to Kentucky, where my parents grew up, and my father purchased the farm that his dad settled. My grandfather and grandmother came from Virginia into Kentucky. Now they grew up in a holler. There's a Powers Holler in Southwest Virginia, so I do have ties to the holler.
What is a
And
holler for those that don't know?
sure, a holler is an area. It's usually a valley or a lower part between two mountains.
Got it.
And we there's definitely a Powers Holler in Wise County, Virginia, and
Wow.
that's where my grandparents were from, in that area. And coming from that part of Kentucky, once we moved from Atlanta to Kentucky, yes, I was on a bus because at that time I was in high school.
Yeah.
So I was on a bus, hour and a half to and an hour and a half back, because my high school
Wow.
was 26 miles away from where I lived. Because in that part of Kentucky, you have one high school per county. And for the kids who lived in town, right, Stanford, the high school was like 5, 10 minutes away. For those of us who were, further out, it was 26 miles away. So easily, if you just drove it straight in a car and there's no highway, you got to understand that. And so it took, 30, 40 minutes just to get to school in a car straight.
Wow.
And a bus just added to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you think all that moving around really taught you and how you see the world?
I tell you, it taught me a lot about humility. It taught me a lot about um, not everybody's experience is the same. And it taught me to really embrace diversity at a different level. Because where I grew up in Ohio, everyone looked like me.
Yeah.
All of our dads were blue collar. And I didn't have any diversity in any of my schools. And we moved to ATL, and Atlanta, it's
Yep.
very diverse. I heard for the first time different languages in the hallway. Um, you know, um, Latinx students speaking, but also you have to understand this was in the early 80s. So there was a large migration from the Vietnam War. Students
Yeah.
from Vietnam, from Cambodia, they were speaking their languages as well. It was the first time that I had a male teacher, first time I had a teacher that didn't look like me. So Atlanta really taught me to embrace difference. And then on the flip side, when we relocated to Kentucky, where my parents grew up, it was a total 360 or a total 180, because it's not diverse. And, the diversity that was there was pocketed. So going in there with a very open mind, it benefited me. I was able to make friends quickly. I played football, so a lot of it was just playing with making friends with the guys I played football with. And but no, the diversity is probably the most valuable experience I had, moving the way that I have. And then that prepared me for Berea, because Berea is very, very diverse, with international students, also African American students and Latinx students.
Man, how long you been at this school now?
I have been at Mount St. Joe for 5 years, and I was at
Wow.
Thomas More, which is a similar school in Northern Kentucky, Catholic private school, for 5 years.
Any Catholic yourself?
No, no, I'm not Catholic myself. But
Man.
what's odd is our sons, my wife and I. She went to a Catholic high school, but she was never Catholic. And we've sent both of our boys K through 12 to Catholic schools.
Wow.
I really cherish the Catholic intellectual tradition and the way that they blend faith and service into their curriculum. And my boys have been blessed. Our oldest boy, he's a fourth year engineering student at University of Cincinnati. He's currently in Japan for 8 months on a co-op, and
Wow.
he
That's
just
cool.
he just got into that culture. And I hope that my wife and I had some things to do with that, but I'm convinced it's his experience in high school with the Catholic intellectual tradition, right?
That's
uh,
cool, man.
Embracing, not only the Catholic faith but all faith and all people. And he's thriving over there. So very excited, for his opportunity. But a lot of that comes from the way that my wife and I have, raised our boys. We've tried to teach them about differences and valuing other folks' opinions, other points of view, not to be so myopic, right? Not
Yep.
not not just to have your own point of view. That there's a world out there. Go discover it.
Man, I love it because it also just shows how aligned you are with the mission, right? That
Oh
your
yes,
own faith background doesn't even matter. It's truly just about what we talked about, fertilizing the future, giving
sure,
other people opportunity, showing that it's possible. And you've been doing that for years. You also had an interesting story on the sisters,
sure.
and how it got started and how it got founded. Can we kind of share that story?
Yeah, absolutely. The Sisters of Charity, the organization or the sisterhood, was founded by Elizabeth Ann Seton,
Mhm.
and early in the 1800s. And then there was a group of sisters that came to Cincinnati and established the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati. That was around 1850, and they were very progressive. They've always, as a part of their ministry and their mission, they really try to help, of course, those in need, but they really have a component of social justice, which is so
Mhm.
important. So when a lot of their emphasis again was on education and nursing, and they really went to educate the immigrants of Cincinnati, which were German and Italian. That's how they started, and giving those students a leg up per se, or an opportunity to continue their education. And it's just blossomed. The university was built in 1920,
Wow.
and it was, I believe, I mean, I know it was an all female school up until I think the early to mid 80s, and then it became co-ed at that time.
Man,
But
what a
that mission
story,
has
man.
not changed. I mean, those sisters, they are forces.
I
and
love it.
um, and it is funny. I know we've had a previous discussion, and I said there's some bad nuns, but bad meaning good, right?
Yeah.
Meaning that they're a force of nature. And the more I work with them, they just live the mission, and it's so impressive when you meet people that live their mission. And they're just not speaking, or they're just not just word. It's true to them. And just the nuns that I've worked with through the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, they've just been phenomenal, and they support what we do, of course. And they let you know what they think, right? They're like, hey, Chris, have you thought about doing this? Yes, sister, I have done this. Well, Chris, have you thought about this? Sister, I haven't thought about that, but let's get on that. Let's get it done. And but it's been a blessing. It's just being able to work for a faith based institution is just refreshing.
I love that. And with 20 plus years, Chris, in this space,
Yeah.
um, What have you seen change for the good and things that may need changing now? So many people, especially, would say that AI is one that a lot of people are adapting to. But I
Yeah.
always hear in like the higher ed that it is a place that sometimes may be late to integrate. Are you guys there, or what other technologies have changed since you
We've
started?
definitely engaged in conversations for a while now, and I mean a couple years. And recently we've had some campus-wide meetings where we've discussed, how AI, how we want to integrate it into the curriculum. We're releasing a new major this fall of 26. That's like a computer science degree with AI.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
we're jumping on board with that because we see that it is a necessity. And again, it can be a slippery slope because with AI, you want to be there technologically, right? You want to prepare your students, but then the more you dive into AI, you start worrying about, okay, is this authentic? Is this moral? Because there's a dark side to AI, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as an education, as an institution of education, you really have to walk that line because we want to prepare our students, right? Even my son, who's at a nearby university, University of Cincinnati, as an engineering student, they have integrated it into their curriculum because they know that when he goes to get a job, the current firms of engineering, they're already using AI. So it's
Yeah.
important for us to advance with that. But like anything, kind of like you said, institutions of higher education, sometimes they're slow to change. And I think to answer a question you asked earlier, I think that's one thing that has improved during my career is we're able to pivot a little quicker than earlier in my career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Universities are adapting technology and they are looking at the landscape of higher ed, and it is forcing our hands a bit to be innovative, to get out in front. Even small schools like us that compete with large universities, for students, but also, for grant money, even the small schools were having to be innovative, but we're able to probably adapt a little quicker than a larger university just because of our size. But I know that we're working on AI and implementing it as we speak. So I'm very confident that we're heading in the right direction.
I mean, for you to even say that you guys are integrating AI into the curriculum is
Sure.
definitely, I mean, I haven't heard, and I've spoken to a couple of leaders that have not, right,
Oh
integrated.
yeah.
Because what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is that there's actually that cliff of people not signing up for the engineers or the computer science
Mhm.
because they feel like with AI, do that job even really matter? And I think
Right.
so. I think that you will be applying for like a prompt engineer or something, because it's like you have to be good at AI as well. You got to understand how to prompt it to give you good data per se. Do you agree?
Yes, it's not going away.
Yeah.
Just and I'm going to make a joke. Just like in my youth, they were like, "Oh, rap music, it's a fad. It's never going away." Has it gone away? No. Has the internet gone away? No. It's just gotten more powerful, and
Yeah.
AI is going to be the same way. It's just going to keep evolving. So, as educators, we really, feel the need to try to get in front of it and just keep pace with it because it's just not going to go away.
No, I agree. I definitely love AI. As you mentioned, there's definitely those guardrails, but it's
Mhm.
like if we are able to educate kids or students early on, then they're better off. What I'm seeing in high school is actually, I think I told you that I lead the organization for the high school that I graduated from, and they block all AIs. And I'm thinking to myself, the kids are going home and using it. Just
Sure.
that I know. So
Right.
it's like, why are we not helping them at that level to say, hey, it's great. You just need to know how to use it. Because if not, then they're
Right.
not knowing how to use it.
And
So
that's been a lot of our discussion because I think, with AI, it can be very applicable to the sciences, but maybe
mhm.
not to English or history, where if you're asked to write a paper, they're just going to type in some prompts and AI is going to spit it out. So we need to still teach students how to think critically, but use it in a constructive way, give them parameters, on how to use it.
Do you think that with everything's happening right now with schools closing down, there were seven.
Hmm.
in our county, I believe between middle schools and elementaries that closed down. What does that really do to the pipeline? Do you think there's a problem there that we just have to look at from a country perspective? Because I think
Sure.
a lot of people are preparing
Yeah,
differently.
I think that's multi-layered. You know, I've been probably for 10 years, been prepared for this year for the precipice of the cliff, right?
Yeah.
You know, from where in 2008, the birth rate dropped, 12, 13%. And now we're seeing those students, come of age to get ready for college. And so there's less students to recruit nationwide. Now, geographically, different parts of the country, in the Southeast, they're seeing more of an uptick, like in Tennessee, North and South Carolina, of students graduated, but in the Midwest, they're dropping. So, that's one headwind that we've really had to navigate and make plans and be strategic with recruiting. Now, another headwind, I'm sure you're well read, and I think we've discussed this before, so you know this. The National Report Card came out, I think, last summer, and basically what the report card revealed is that only 1/3 of graduating seniors are college ready in English, math, and science. So
Wow.
that's another challenge, for us in higher ed, because and to me, it's a great exercise in meeting the student where they are.
Yep.
And again, you have some old guard faculty that have been doing it a while, and they expect everyone, to be college ready, or they're expecting everyone to be able to have a 33, 34, or 35 ACT and be able to write well, the first day of class. And that's just not true. So a lot of schools are having to pivot, and the more they rely on access, providing that access to students who are still first gen, that still demonstrate need financially.
Hmm.
They're having to meet those students, where they are, to bring them along. And I think that's going to be the big key for universities in the next 10 to 15 years. Those that can adapt and meet the students where they are and try to bring them along with any type of support, academic support that they need.
Yeah.
You speak about the population of students that are neurodivergent, being able to help those students through, because that population is growing as well. And, to meet our mission, or to live our mission at the Mount, we have to be prepared for that. And I think a lot of universities are thinking that way, but some will get there quicker than others, for sure.
I mean, you just thinking of the market in a different way of, hey, we're seeing, a lot of people graduating here, not so much here. That's already you ahead of the curve, right?
Oh,
Because
sure.
I've spoken to some leaders, and you're probably the second leader I've spoken to out of maybe 10 to 15. So clearly you're already thinking like, hey, maybe we're just in the wrong markets, or maybe we should just kind of redirect our strategy. So I actually love that, man. And I ask you, man, with 25, is it 25 years you said,
Yeah,
right, this year?
25 years this year.
What has staying this long taught you that you could not have never learned by leaving?
The resiliency of students. Um, Unless you're really in the thick of it,
Mhm.
and the more students you work with, you realize that some students do have that resiliency. Because I've met some students that come from very impoverished backgrounds, very violent backgrounds.
Yep.
And they're in grad school now. Two of them, one's a dentist and the other is a physician. And the way that they came up, I mean, they were in gang affiliated neighborhoods. I mean, you think I'm an anomaly. These kids are just fantastic. And really working with the students, what's taught me over the 25 years is, wow, some of these students, they are resilient. They do have the grit, despite what some professionals say, with Gen Z, like, oh, they don't know how to push through, or, they don't have grit like the older generations do, like my generation
Yep.
and the boomers before me. And, but that's really taught me that all students are different, man. And the longer that I'm in higher ed, I realize that you do have to meet them where they are, to ensure success. If you're truly dedicated to higher education, and you're truly dedicated, and you believe that students deserve a chance and you can help them, then yeah, you got to take a gamble on some students, right? You got to roll the dice. Not all of them make it, but there are some that have that resiliency, and that's just something that has really been brought to light to me over the past 25 years. Where before, like in corporate, like when I was working in a restaurant, I'm like, there's no hope for this dude. He's just like dumb as a box of rocks. But when you're in a university setting, your mindset changes, and especially if you've been in it a long time. You just
Yeah.
have to see what registers with that student, because they all have passion, right? We all have a passion, and it's just tapping into that passion and being supportive, and realizing not everyone had your upbringing, and not everyone had your not breaks in life, but had the same road and the same opportunity.
That's the hard part sometimes, right? Because
Sure
you
it
know
is.
where you come from, and you're like, man, like I'm showing you can, but you're right. Not everybody has the same story. Some people just
Yeah.
didn't have the guidance maybe in their lives, and that's huge. I mean, you've had the guidance. You had someone to tell you that you could,
Oh,
right?
for
And
sure.
what do we say to those students that maybe they're first gen and they didn't
Oh,
see it,
yeah.
and no one's told them that they're worthy of it, or they never had the example of someone going to college? What do we tell that individual?
Yeah, I mean, based on my experience too, it's so important for those type of students, and I really seek those students out. I seek out those first gen students because of my own experience, and there's always a certain level of like an imposter syndrome. Like, man, I don't belong here. I'm not the smartest person in the class. Yeah, neither was I. But I just put in the work, and I was stubborn. And I try to identify with the students, because you'd be amazed, especially at a small school. And we just did a survey, and one of the questions was, who have you connected to outside of the classroom? And a lot of the athletes, of course, said coaches, but a lot of the students who they've connected with was just random. Like a couple of folks were folks on the custodial staff, right? So
Mm,
those
yeah.
positions matter at every level in higher ed. No matter what you do, a student could identify with you. I've helped a few students, even as a vice president. I have people on my staff that have helped students, and it's just encouraging those students and just being there for them. Because a lot of times, as a first gen student, when you're experiencing, higher ed for the first time, man, it's like, drinking water out of a fire hose. And you don't know how to prioritize. You don't maybe know how to take notes. You
Yeah.
didn't have to take notes in high school. So it could be as simple as just sitting them down and be like, hey, Efren, how'd your week go, man? What's up? Well, everything's cool, yada yada, but I'm having this problem. Okay, what's your problem? Just really breaking it down, just taking the time, to sit down with them, and to help them answer any questions where they don't feel like it's a stupid question.
Yep.
And that's one of the things working with first gen that I've really taken pride in is I'll answer any question, even if they feel that it's stupid, and just reassuring them, hey man, I was in your shoes at one time. There's other people that had a journey similar to yours. So, let us help you. And those students who open up, who want to help, yeah, I think they thrive.
I don't think I've mentioned this to anybody, but um, I felt that college is so much easier than high school, to be quite
Mhm.
frank. Like, I don't know that high school did any good for me, because that transition from high school to college, I'm like, college is so much more easier. They made it seem like it was so difficult. So I think
Right.
there's also that stigma that it is difficult, and it really is not. I think the only difficult part that I had was waiting in line at the I don't know what it's called, student service center, trying to get some answers about maybe
Sure.
a class or something.
Right.
And I think that it probably already changed in how we communicate there, but I would definitely say from a student perspective, man, it was, I thought it was going to be harder than what it was, and I
Right.
was only doing two classes at a time and working, but even then I still felt comfortable enough with the
Sure.
online. I think one of my classes were online at some point. Just being able to be flexible, I don't know. Do you hear that often? There were students say, man, this is actually easier than what I thought.
Well, some come through that and that mindset, but I think those are your students that are naturally confident, right? The
Mm,
more confident the student is, I think college the transition is much easier. And it's those students who may not have the confidence where they struggle a bit. But a lot of the athletes I talk to, they're pretty confident. So
yeah.
they breeze through their transition pretty well. Not all of them, but some of them do. And I would say just it depends on how structured the student is and their life experience. But I have spoken to some students where, there's like, hey, I'm not having any problems. And there's an old rule of thumb that I was taught early on in higher ed. It's the rule of thirds. Like, Chris, 1/3 of the student population, they're not going to need your help. They're going to
Okay.
be fine. There's going to be 1/3 that no matter what you do, they're going to fail and leave school. The best identity is that middle third, that if you give them a little help, they're going to be successful. So, I've really adopted that law of thirds early on in my career, especially the more I started to work with students. And I've seen that to be pretty true. But yeah, like you said, it was easy. It was easier for you than most. And there are students that come through that they kind of just walk through the whole process.
Yeah, man, I was in high school, I was like a 2.0 student. In
Right.
college, I was a 3.5, and I'm like, look at me. I'm
Yeah.
smart out here. I'm not the dumb kid.
Right.
Now,
Well,
life
a
was
lot of
really
that's
lifing.
maturity, right? You probably
That
a little
is.
more mature.
That was. And life was really lifing as an adult. Going back to, we all had a something that we were struggling with growing up. By the time I went to college, I was already living on my own. So
Yeah.
I was making my own decisions. There were so
Right.
many things that I could control that I couldn't control the uncontrollable, which kind of allowed so many different things to happen at the high school level where whatever, I wasn't the best student. But yeah, man, college is where I really started to take control. I was already working, right? I was already a general manager at 19 years old. So I had some sort of structure, some sort
Okay.
of leadership.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely excited to just see that you've given your life to this, man. But who is Chris Powers outside higher ed, man? What is that thing that keeps you grounded?
Man, my wife and kids. I have two boys. Evan's 22, Ben's 18. Chrissy and I, we've been married 23 years, going on 23 years,
Okay.
and they keep me grounded. I mean, it's just so rewarding to be in a healthy marriage, to actually have a life partner
Yeah.
who supports you, and we support each other. But just to have two young men, and to raise them, and it's just been a blessing. So that's what really keeps me grounded. And my wife, she don't play, so I don't have a choice but to be grounded, right? But no, she's very proud of my accomplishments professionally, and I'm proud of hers because she went back to finish as an adult student. She started, your stereotypical story. She
Yeah.
started out of high school, but was trying to work full time, and then the full time work became more of a priority than
Yep.
her education. She did well, but after we were married and both boys, they were older. She went back to school, went to get her BFA, Bachelor's in Fine Arts, and she's an art teacher now, and
Oh,
she loves it.
yeah.
So I mean, it's we're blessed. I really have no reason to complain in my life at all.
I love it. Yeah, I am going to be that adult student because I have like two classes to finish to get an
Come on,
AA
man, knock
degree.
it out, knock it out. Go online,
You
knock
know,
those classes out.
the funny thing is, I attempted to try a couple of times. The last one, I was at the airline industry. They were going to pay for it, and it was like those online. I don't know, like a Penn State University or something like that.
Yeah,
But they made me do like a whole bunch of beginning classes again. So I was doing those, and then life start life, and I left. And I think I did this again twice. But I do, and like your wife, I was very successful. I am still successful in what I do, but it's allowing, going back to what we just mentioned, if our kids don't see it, how do they even know
yeah,
it's possible?
sure.
So I want to give them both options. Dad was a businessman. Dad was also, went to school and got a degree.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be less than me, right? Like you want to be better than dad. So you better
Oh,
go do it.
and
So
that's,
yeah,
man, I've
I am
set
that
the
guy.
bar for my boys. Or I mean, 18 months old, I started setting the bar.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I tell both boys this. I said, you will never ever have another man in your life that roots for you like me, because I'm your father. I'm your
Yeah.
dad. I want you to be 10 times better than I am. I want you to be happy and successful. So I will always support that. And it's the truth. I mean, you don't have to have a college degree to be successful.
Yeah.
My father had a seventh grade education, mechanic. Mama stayed at home, and they both were successful in their own rights. And my wife was successful before she received her education. But an education, the way I've explained it to my boys, a college education is something they can never take away from you.
Yeah.
You know, if they want to go to school, get a major, and then they want to do something different with their life, at least they're going to have that education.
to fall back on.
And
Absolutely.
education now is what I've seen change also in my career, my own experience with higher ed was it's a little more transactional now. People go to school to get a piece of paper to make more paper, right?
Yep.
So to get a job. Back in my generation, back in the 80s and 90s when I was in college, it was about finding yourself, finding your path. That's one way education has changed. And but it's to me, it's no less valued. And you can get so much out of a degree because you hear so much about, just go trades. You're not going to go in debt. But I'm like, but you'll go in debt for a $120,000 truck, or you're going to go in debt for a house. Invest in yourself.
Yeah.
And, maybe you'll go in debt 40, 50 grand for a college education, but you're betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And that concept has really been foreign to me, that people will go out and get a bunch of toys and finance it and go in debt, and that's fine. But I'm like, you're not going to bet on yourself. You don't want to try to, get an education. And there's some folks, college just isn't their path, and that's 100% fine. We need to celebrate all paths. We just need to strive, for happiness and success, and whatever that looks like in your life, that's great.
Yeah. It's funny you say the car because that's that a car loses value as soon as you drive it off the
Yeah.
lot. Right. But you get that degree, man. There's this 2, 3, 4x ROI, and you're not losing value. As you mentioned,
Right.
you would always hold on to that value because you've made that investment in yourself. And the investment is so much more than just the piece of paper. It's everything you've learned. It's the people that you've meet. Is the network. Like there's when you think about it, and not that I was involved in it, but as I'm sitting here speaking more to individuals, that wow, it is really a community where you can fail and be okay. Right. And there's someone there to help you. There's guidance. There's someone like Chris Powers. There's maybe another student.
Right.
At work, you fail, you're on the chopping block, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. Right.
so people have to look at it, I think, from different perspectives as well, not just from, oh my God, I'm going in debt. And I think for a very long time, that is a stigma that's been out there. It's like you're going to go in debt and then what? Like you're going to be working forever to try to get that paid off. I don't know that that's true case, but it's just the case that a lot of people probably made and becomes a fear for so many others that may have
Oh,
never
sure.
seen it happen.
Especially the students that are going to school now, Gen Z, they're very sensitive about debt. Both of my boys are just super concerned about, college loans. And I'm like, look, as long as you're not getting like $150,000 in student loans, you're going to be okay, man.
Right.
And again, I'm just trying to get them to invest in their future and invest in themselves. Cause like you said, a college education is more than just papers and tests and reading books. I mean, it's about the experience. And I've explained that to our 18-year-old. I said, Ben, between the age of 18 and 22, you're not going to get those years back.
Yep.
And, go experience life at a university, try different things. I said, because once you get your big boy job, things change.
Yep.
You don't have that freedom anymore to just try stuff, especially when you get married and have children, you got responsibilities.
Yep. And life happens fast. So
Oh,
yeah.
very fast. Because I said, buddy, I remember when I was 18, just like it was yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, man, I thank you so much for your time, and I know we're coming here
Yeah.
to an end, but where could people find more information about the school, yourself? Are you on LinkedIn, things like that, so people can continue to
Oh,
connect and
sure.
talk
Yeah,
more?
I'm definitely on LinkedIn, Christopher Powers. And then with MSJ, just go to msj.edu to find out more about our university. And, you can find more information about our mission, more about the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, but also what we do. We're a premier D3 university in the Cincinnati area. We have, over 20 sports available, but we have a great curriculum, a lot of majors to choose from. And we even have graduate programs such as in physician assistant, doctorate in physical therapy. So we offer a lot for a smaller school.
Love it. Well, Chris, man, thank you so much for your time. For those
Yes,
that are
sir.
still watching, make sure that you guys do like, share, and comment. This is how we continue to have these conversations. I believe that a lot of times we just don't know what we don't know. And we have people like Chris that gets to share some more
Correct.
insight about some phenomenal schools in our own country. You guys got to tap in and find those resources and find out how you can also invest in yourself because that's what it is an investment. Chris, we thank you. We thank you for watching. We'll
Thank
catch you on the
you.
next one.
Take care. Good to see you.